Hi, my friends. Hi, third graders. Hope you're having a great day today. It's Marvelous Monday. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. We're able to maybe get outside a little bit. Um, Kind of crazy waking up today to some snow, wasn't it? Wow. But right now, by this time, it's all kind of melted away. Wonder if we'll see any more, or if that was our last little bit. So I wanted to come on here and say, of course, hi, let you know I've been thinking about you. But it is that time for the miraculous journey of Edward Tulane, and we're on our final two chapters. We're going to finally find out how this book ends. I just want to kind of recap where we were from last Friday. And Edward had now been sitting up on the shelf, and he had that rather unpleasant doll sitting next to him, and she just couldn't understand and believe how he didn't want to be sold. He didn't want anyone to buy him anymore. And she was rather kind of rude towards Edward. And so finally she was sold, and he thought, good, get her out of here. And so he prided in himself now that he was not hoping to have someone love him. He was not allowing his heart to open up. And just as Lucius Clark, the shop owner, was getting ready to close down the store, he had placed another doll next to Edward on the shelf. And that's where we come into chapter 26, where it has the new doll. And I want you to really look at her face. You can kind of see, when I look closely, you can kind of see like cracks, like she's possibly been broken, maybe like him before. So let's listen in, and let's see what happens now that Lucia Clark just set the doll on the shelf. There you are, my lady. Meet the rabbit doll, said Lucius. The doll mender walked away, turned out the lights one by one. In the gloom of the shop, Edward could see that the doll's head, like his, had been broken and repaired. Her face was in fact a web of cracks. She was wearing a baby bonnet. How do you do? She said in a high, thin voice. I'm pleased to meet your acquaintance. Hello, said Edward. Have you been here long? She asked. Months and months, said Edward. But I don't care. One place is the same as another to me. Oh, not for me, said the doll. I have lived 100 years, and in that time I've been in places that were heavenly, and others that were horrid. After a time you learn that each place is different, and you become a different doll in each place too. Quite different. 100 years? Said Edward. I'm old. The old doll mender, he confirmed this. He said that when he was mending me, that I was at least 100 years old. Edward thought about everything that had happened to him in his short life. What kind of adventures would he have been on in the world if he lived for a century? The old doll said, I wonder who will come for me this time. Someone will come. Someone always comes. Who will it be? Well, I don't care if anyone comes for me, said Edward. Oh, but that's dreadful, said the old doll. There's no point in going on if you feel that way. No point at all. You must be filled with expectancy. You must be in anguish and hope. You must wonder who will love you, whom will love you next. Oh, I am done with being loved, Edward told her. I'm done with loving. It's just too painful. Pish, said the old doll. Where is your courage? Somewhere else, I guess, said Edward. You disappoint me, she said. You disappoint me greatly. If you have no intention of loving or being loved, then the whole journey is pointless. You might as well just leap from this shelf right now and let yourself shatter into a million pieces. Just get over with it. Get over with it now. Oh, I would leap if I was able, said Edward. Well, shall I push you? Said the old doll. No, thank you, Edward said to her. Not that you could, he muttered to himself. What's that? Oh, nothing, said Edward. The darkness in the doll shop was now complete. The old doll and Edward sat on their shelf and stared straight ahead. You disappoint me, said the old doll. Her words made Edward think of Pellegrina. of warthogs and princesses, of listening and loving and spells and curses. And what if there was somebody waiting to love him? What if there was somebody whom he would love again? Was it possible? Edward felt his heart stir about. No, no, he told his heart, that's not possible. It's not possible. Well, in the morning, Lucia Clark came and unlocked the shop. Good morning, my darlings, he came out and called to them. Good morning, my lovelies. He pulled up the shades on the windows, he turned on the light above his stool, and he switched on the sign on the door that said open. The first customer was a little girl with her father. Are you looking for something special? Lucia Clark said to them. Yeah, said the girl. I'm looking for a friend. Her father put her on her shoulders and they walked slowly around the shop. The girl studied each doll carefully. She looked Edward right in the eyes. She nodded at him. Have you decided, Natalie? Her father asked. Yes, she said. I want that one right there in the baby bonnet. Oh, said Lucia Clark. Now you know she's very old. She's a rather antique. Oh, but she needs me, said Natalie firmly. Next to Edward, the old doll let out a sigh. She seemed to sit up a little straighter. Lucia came and took her off the shelf and handed her to Natalie. And when they left, when the girl's father opened the door for his daughter and the old doll, a bright shaft of the early morning light came flooding in. And Edward heard quite clearly, as if he were still sitting next to him, if the old doll was still near him, he could hear the old doll's voice say, Open your heart, she said gently. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. But first, you must open your heart. The door closed and the sunlight disappeared. Someone will come. Edward's heart started stirring. He thought for the first time in a long time of the house on Egypt Street and of Abilene winding his watch and then bending over him and placing him on his left leg and saying, I will come home to you. I will come home. No, 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 he told himself. Don't believe it. Don't let yourself believe it. But it was too late. Someone will come for you. The China Rabbit's heart had begun again to open a little bit. Here's a picture that shows Edward sitting alone again on that shelf. Oh. And now we're on chapter 27. Our final chapter. And it shows the doll shop door opening. And it looks as though someone trying to close an umbrella. Seasons passed. Fall and winter and spring and summer. Leaves blew in through the open door of Lucia Clark's shop, and rain in the green, outrageous, hopeful light of spring. People came and went, grandmothers and doll collectors, and little girls with their mothers, and Edward Tulane waited. The seasons turned into years. Edward Tulane waited. He repeated the old doll's words over and over until they wore a smooth groove of hope in his brain. Someone will come. Someone will come for you. And the old doll was right. Someone did come. It was springtime, and it was raining, and there was dogwood blossoms on the floor of Lucia Clark's shop. She was a small girl, maybe 5 years old, and while her mother struggled to close the blue umbrella, the little girl walked around the store, stopping and staring at each doll and then moving on. When she came to Edward, she stood in front of him for what seemed to be a very long time. She looked at him, and he looked back at her. Someone will come, Edward said. Someone will come for me. The girl smiled, and then she stood on her tiptoes and took Edward off the shelf. She cradled him in her arms. She held him in the same ferocious, tender way that Sarah Ruth had held him. Oh, thought Edward, I remember this. Madame, said Lucius Clark, could you please attend to your daughter? She is holding a very fragile, very precious, expensive doll. Maggie, said the woman. She looked up from the still open umbrella. What have you got? A rabbit, said Maggie. A what? Said the mother. A rabbit, said Maggie again, and I want him. Remember, we're not buying anything today. We're just looking, said the woman. Madame, said Lucius Clark, please. The woman came over and stood over Maggie. She looked down at Edward. The rabbit began to feel dizzy. He was now wondering for a minute if his head had cracked open again, if maybe he was dreaming. Look, Mama, said Maggie. Look at him. I see him, said the woman. She dropped her umbrella. She put her hand on the locket that hung around her neck. And Edward saw then that it was not a locket at all, that it was a watch, a pocket watch. It was his watch. Edward? Said Abilene. Yes, said Edward. Edward, she said again, certain this time. Yes, said Edward. Yes, it is me. That's how the story ends. Oh my gosh, it's the best ending, isn't it? It's a full circle. So he's now back with Abilene. Abilene now is a grown woman. She's a mom. And Abilene's daughter came into the store, and Abilene's young daughter saw Edward. And so through all of Edward's journey and all the people that loved him and cared for him, when he was first thrown off of that ship, when he was with Abilene's family, remember, Abilene was about 8. And now Abilene has a daughter that's around 5. Unbelievable, isn't it? Have you ever read a book that had such a fabulous ending? Well, this book, we're lucky enough, it gives you a little tidbit, because I bet you're wondering, well, what happens next? And there's something called a coda. And it's just a 1-page little snapshot that kind of starts from the beginning of the story and goes all the way on to the very end. And it tells us a little bit about what happens with Edward and Abilene. So here we go. Once there was a China rabbit who was loved by a little girl. The rabbit went on an ocean journey and fell overboard and was rescued by a fisherman. He was then buried under garbage and unburied by a dog, and he traveled for a long time with the hobos and worked for a short time as a scarecrow. Once there was a rabbit who loved a little girl and watched her die. The rabbit danced on the streets of Memphis. His head was broken in a diner and was put back together by a doll mender. And the rabbit swore that he would not make the mistake in loving again. Now listen carefully. Once there was a rabbit who danced in a garden in springtime with the daughter of the woman he had loved at the beginning of his journey. The girl swung the rabbit as she danced in circles. Sometimes they went so fast, the two of them, that it seemed as if they were flying. Sometimes it seemed as if they both had wings. Oh, once, marvelous once, there was a rabbit who found his way home. And that concludes our classroom read aloud, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. I hope and I know that many of you have enjoyed this book as much as I have. And I hope this is one that maybe you'll pick up and read again sometime, maybe by yourself. Well, I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. And tomorrow we will come on and I will share our new read aloud with you. And it's a fun one, it's a kind of a silly one. So it's a little different than the one that we just shared. So I will come on tomorrow and I will talk to you soon. And take care, my friends.